everyone, and welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. It is time for one of my favorite events that I host every March or April every year, the Pickle Awards. But the difference here, the kicker here, is that this is not the Pickle Awards for this year, 2024. There's still like 5 or 6 months left of movies to dissect there. This is the Pickle Awards for 10 years ago for the films of 2014. I have been doing a 2014 retrospective on the channel and on my Letterboxd. The retrospective ended on July 31st, but I have two more videos to bring to you. One being this, the very video you are watching today, which is the Pickle Awards, where I will be awarding my favorite films and actors and techs and all that jazz from the films of 2014 using my Pickle Awards template that I use normally every year when I talk about new releases. The kicker here also is that you guys did not get the ballot to see the votes, so you will not be giving an audience award this time, but I am going to allow the comment section to open up if anyone wants to share what they would have voted for. I will be sharing not just my winner, but I will also be giving my runner-up because there are so many close races here. And I will also be talking about the Oscar nominees in comparison to my Pickle Award nominees. See how much I lined up with the Academy, how much we differed, and all that stuff. So I'm very, very excited to get into this because there's so many films to watch for this retrospective that I feel like I don't have the spotlight to talk about each and every one of them on the channel. So this is kind of that way to shed some light on some films that maybe you haven't heard of, maybe you haven't seen, or maybe you haven't seen in a really long time. It's been 10 years, so I'm very excited. Now, the only category I will not be sharing is Best Picture. And the reason for that is because the last video for this retrospective is my top 14 of 2014. So you can expect that video in the next few days where I will be telling you what my top 10 is and my 11 through 14, but also what my 10 is, what I would have nominated for Best Picture, and then I will give my number one film of the year, so you can definitively know what I would have awarded the Pickle Award to had we done this 10 years ago. So it's a very, very fun experiment. Now, the first category I want to get out the gate, it's a little bit sad just because I didn't see more than one documentary in 2014. There was just so many movies to get to that documentaries, they were always on my watch list, but I never quite got into it in depth like I would have liked to. So the first category we are going to be giving is the only nomination of the year for me, which is Best Documentary, which is Life itself. This is the Roger Ebert documentary about him, his life as a critic, but also his very, very sad struggle with cancer, where he had to get his jaw removed, and how he kind of lived the last decade of his life without having a physical voice, but how he learned to cope with that and how he learned to use that to kind of set his life beyond and kind of grow further than he could ever imagine in different ways. So I think it's a beautiful documentary, and it is the sole recipient here for Best Documentary, the sole nominee, sole recipient. If we're looking at the Oscars, they nominated Finding Vivian Mayer, Last Days in Vietnam, The Salt of the Earth, Virunga, and the winner, Citizen 4. I didn't see any of those. I want to eventually watch a few of those. I just didn't have the time for this retrospective to do so. So moving on, before we get into some of the Oscar categories, I wanted to give all my superlatives. Every Pickle Awards, there's always some fun superlatives. So why don't we get right into it? The best movie opening, the best way to set the scene for what those movies would be. My five nominees: Beyond the Lights, the whole flashback to when she's a kid and when she first sings for the first time. Boyhood, that just opening shot of Eller in the grass. It's just a really great opening shot when you have seen the whole film and you kind of go back to the beginning. It's really, really powerful. A powerful image, a very iconic image. Guardians of the Galaxy, obviously that whole flashback to Peter Quill in his past, going into the Come and Get Your Love sequence. The Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies. This is basically the cliffhanger of Desolation of Smaug, where we actually see the demolition of Smaug and the defeat of Smaug there at the beginning of Hobbit. And then Whiplash, this obviously very powerful opening of him kind of in this long hallway playing the drums and J.K. Simmons walking up to him in that pseudo, it feels like a dream sequence almost. So my winner, I'll start with the runner-up. The runner-up, the one that I think came very close, is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy. I love that flashback. But my winner is actually going to be a flashback in and of itself, which is also Beyond the Lights. Beyond the Lights is going to be my favorite way to open a movie. It tells you all you need to know about this dynamic between mother and daughter. It's a very beautiful opening, a very soulful, very inspired opening that really sets the tone for the film very well. Now we move to the movie closing, and I'm going to try not to spoil it too hard here, but these movies are 10 years old, so it's going to be hard not to for some of these. But my nominees are the whole montage sequence of 22 Jump Street, where we go to 23, then 24, then 25, just a hilarious montage. Then we have Enemy, obviously obviously one of the most iconic final shots of any movie, let alone that year, but in general. Then we have Gone Girl, again, a very obvious pick for, the imagery and just the big pivot that it takes at the end, the shock that it leaves the audience with at the end. Interstellar, just the whole like go back to her coop thing. And then Whiplash, obviously, that whole ending is just amazing. And my runner up is going to be Interstellar because it leaves me on that emotional high. But the winner for this has got to be Whiplash. Whiplash is the best movie closing of that year. Now we get into some of the love categories. First, the on-screen couple award. Now, I will say there's a disclaimer. This was 10 years ago. So I'm looking at it in the lens of what was the best movie couple 10 years ago in these movies. Some of these people have not aged well. Some of these people are not necessarily working a lot for very obvious reasons. That is just my blanket statement, and I will get into it right now with the first of that example, which is Ansel Elgort and Shailene Woodley for The Fault in Our Stars. Obviously, a movie all about their love and their love story. Felicity Jones and Eddie Redmayne, The Theory of Everything, a very unconventional one because they do break up in the film, but I think what their love is, even beyond their breakup, is so powerful and really is what the movie rides on. Zoe Kazan and Daniel Radcliffe, What If, just the sweetest little romance. Keira Knightley and Sam Rockwell, a bit of an unexpected romance late in the film that I really love from Laggies. And then Gugu Mbatha-Raw and Nate Parker from Beyond the Lights, another persona non grata with Nate Parker, but their relationship in the movie is one of the fundamental core things I love about it. So my runner-up, though, is going to be Felicity Jones and Eddie Redmayne. It was like one of those movie couples that made me believe in love, even though it doesn't necessarily have the happiest ending. It's the right ending, which I love. But the winner is going to be Zoe Kazan and Daniel Radcliffe for What If. I just think it's the most charming couple, the sweetest couple, and the one that I root for the most. Now, with every couple comes a kiss, even some kisses that aren't from couples. You'll see in a sec what I mean. Here's the nominees for Best Kiss. The first one is the one that is not a couple, but it is Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, an iconic moment. Another iconic moment from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, when he comes into graduation and he dips her and kisses her with their caps and gowns. It's the sweetest little kiss. The steamiest kiss on the list, Theo James and Shailene Woodley from Divergent. We also have Zoe Kazan and Daniel Radcliffe when they finally kiss in What If. And Gugu Mbatha-Raw and Nate Parker for Beyond the Lights. They have a lot of kisses in this film, but I went with the plain kiss where he's blindfolded and she kind of kisses him to like ease his mind because he has a fear of flying. It's a really sentimental, really powerful scene in general, but that kiss is really elevating it. My runner-up, just for the steaminess, because it is just so passionate, is Theo James and Shailene Woodley for Divergent. But my winner and my favorite kiss on this list is Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone for Amazing Spider-Man 2. Their chemistry is so great. I didn't nominate them for screen couple, and some people are going to be pissed about that, but they spent so much of the movie not as a couple that I felt like they fit the kiss category better than the couple category. Moving on to someone we don't like, the villain of the film, but this is more about the villain performance, not the villain or antagonist performance. The nominees are Steve Carell from Foxcatcher, Toby Kebbell as Koba in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Rosamund Pike, of course, as Amazing Amy in Gone Girl, the man himself, J.K. Simmons in Whiplash, and then Dan Stevens, the guest. That might be a spoiler alert, but he is the villain of that film. The runner-up is going to be Rosamund Pike. I think her performance is fantastic, but there's no stopping J.K. Simmons here. He is the Pickle Award winner here for the movie Whiplash. He is just utterly exceptional in the role. Next, speaking of antagonists, we have the worst film of the year. This is the Framewreck Award, like I like to call it. Some of these films are so bad it's good. Some of them are just flat out bad. But they are all, in my opinion, the 5 worst films of the year. The nominees are Annie, Leprechaun Origins, The Nut Job, RoboCop, the remake, Sharkotpus versus Pteracuda, which we did cover on Framewreck. Go check it out. We actually covered Leprechaun as well on Framewreck, and I did a review for The Nut Job, so I've talked about a lot of those. My runner-up would be Leprechaun Origins. I really think that movie is terrible, but my least favorite film of the year, it might not be the worst film, but I'm giving it the Pickle Award because I hate what it stands for. I hate that they remade it, is going to be RoboCop 2014. I hate that film so much. We're moving on now to some of the music categories now. First up, the use of a pre-existing song. This is a fun little superlative where we're talking about needle drops, songs that existed before the films came out but were used for the films. My nominees are Come and Get Your Love from Guardians of the Galaxy, Diamonds from Girlhood, a beautiful moment there. Time in a Bottle, obviously an iconic one from X-Men Days of Future Past, the one with the Quicksilver scene. Yellow for Boyhood. Again, it sets that opening scene so well. And then Yesterday Was Hard on Us. This is the montage in Selma right before the final credits. So not the final song, which is nominated for original song, but the one right before that, that montage is really beautiful. That would be my runner-up. Yesterday Was Hard on All of Us from Selma. But the winner, it's got to be Time in a Bottle from X-Men Days of Future Past. Just one of the most iconic needle drops in modern movies. Next, moving on to Best Original Score, which is actually fun because we do have the stats. We do have the Oscar nominees to reference before we get into my nominees. The Oscars nominated The Grand Budapest Hotel, which won for Alexander Desplat, nominated Alexander Desplat again for The Imitation Game, nominated Hans Zimmer for Interstellar, Gary Yershon for Mr. Turner, and Johan Johansson for The Theory of Everything. I actually went 3 for 5 here in this category. I did have Alexander Desplat for The Grand Budapest Hotel. I had Hans Zimmer for Interstellar, and I did have Johan Johansson for The Theory of Everything. My substitutions, though, I would have also had Joshua Abrams for Life Itself. He almost kind of creates a theme for Roger Ebert that kind of just captures his ethos and pathos so well. And then Joe Hisaishi from The Tale of Princess Kaguya. Again, Studio Ghibli has some of the most gorgeous music you'll see in any animation, and this is no exception. My runner-up would be Hans Zimmer for Interstellar. I think it's a great score, one of his best, but my winner is actually The Theory of Everything, Johan Johansson. One of the most beautiful romantic scores I've ever heard. So it is the highlight of that film to me, next to the acting, is that score. Next, moving on to Best Original Song. Let's look at what the Oscars nominated here. They nominated and awarded the win to Glory from Selma, music and lyrics by John Stevens and Lonnie Lin. It nominated Everything is Awesome from the Lego Movie, Grateful from Beyond the Lights, I'm Not Gonna Miss You from Glenn Campbell, I'll Be Me, and Lost Stars from Begin Again. I go 2 for 5 here with the Oscars. I do also have Glory from Selma in my lineup. I also have Everything is Awesome from the Lego Movie, but I also have the Lana Del Rey song Big Eyes from Big Eyes. I think it's a great, great song. It really fits the Burton-esque mood of the song, of the film itself. I've got If You've Only Got a Mustache from A Million Ways to Die in the West. I love Seth MacFarlane's comedic songs. He's like the kind of next best thing next to Weird Al in terms of that genre for me. And I think he does such a great job on Family Guy. And this is another great, great, fun, silly, stupid song. I really, really like this song. And then The Last Goodbye, The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies, sung by Billy Boyd himself, Pippin from the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings movies. He sings this in the end credits. It's a beautiful song. My runner-up would be The Last Goodbye. I think it's a gorgeous song, but my winner is also the winner for the Oscar. It is Glory from Selma. I think it's just a fantastic, fantastic song. So I would have also awarded it the win here. Now we're going to get into some specific categoried movies and performances and categories for the Pickle Awards in terms of genres. We're going to be looking at Best Comedy and Musical first. First, looking at the Best Actors in a Comedy and or Musical Film. The nominees here for the Pickle Awards are Adam Driver for What If. His "I'm eating nachos" line is one of my favorite line deliveries of all time, so I had to put him on this list. Ralph Fiennes, obviously, for The Grand Budapest Hotel, just really leads that film well. Michael Keaton, same thing for Birdman. Edward Norton for Birdman, a great performance, and Daniel Radcliffe for What If. So 2 What Ifs, 2 Birdmans, and a Grand Budapest. My runner-up will be Ralph Fiennes for Grand Budapest, but my winner here is Michael Keaton. I think his performance in Birdman is one of the best of his career. Moving on to Best Actress in a Comedy or Musical, we have Zoe Kazan for What If. Again, it balances Daniel Radcliffe so well, has her great own arc in that thing. Keira Knightley in Laggies is a really charismatic, awkward, quirky performance of hers. A bit jarring, her accent, but I love it. Jenny Slate from Obvious Child, very funny, but also very heartwarming as well. Meryl Streep for Into the Woods, she is the highlight of that ensemble. I don't love the film as much as I used to, but she is the standout. Amber Stevens-West from 22 Jump Street, she really just surprised me in this film. I really liked her, and I honestly wish her character did more in the final act of the film because I liked her so much. My runner-up would be Zoe Kazan from What If. She is very, very good, but my winner is Jenny Slate for Obvious Child. She is the obvious pick for me of these 5 for my favorite performance in a comedy and or musical. Now moving on to the Best Comedy and or Musical Film. My nominees are Birdman, The Grand Budapest Hotel, Obvious Child, Pride, a really great Pride film to watch in June, which I did in June. What If? I've been bringing it up a lot. Really great rom-com. But my runner-up here is going to be actually the Best Picture winner of the year, which is Birdman. And my winner is going to be The Grand Budapest Hotel. It is, for me, the funniest of this list. It is the best film of this list, so I'm very happy there. Moving on now to the sci-fi and or horror genre. This is hard because some of these films could also technically be action films, but I decided a film either went in the action category or went in the sci-fi and or horror category. I didn't want to mix and match because I wanted to include as much variety as possible here in these awards. So my nominees for Best Actor in a Sci-Fi and or Horror Film, the nominees are Chris Evans in Snowpiercer, Toby Kebbell as Koba, once again, for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Matthew McConaughey for Interstellar, a really emotional performance there, Andy Serkis, another great mocap performance for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and Noah Wiseman for The Babadook. He's a kid, but he acts just as well as all the adults in this category. But my runner-up and winner both come from the same movie. My runner-up would be Andy Serkis for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, but my winner would be Toby Kebbell for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. What he's doing is Koba is some of the most frightening work ever. He didn't win Best Villain for me, but he is the best actor in a sci-fi and or horror film for me easily. So now moving on to Best Actress for a sci-fi and or horror film, we have Essie Davis for The Babadook, another one of those big three alongside Lupita Nyong'o and Toni Collette as like the definitive horror performances of that genre. Not to tip my hand for later of what I think is going to win this one, but we also have Karen Gillan for Oculus, Anne Hathaway for Interstellar, Scarlett Johansson for Under the Skin, and a very transformative Tilda Swinton in Snowpiercer. My runner-up would be Tilda Swinton in Snowpiercer. It's a very transformative performance, but my winner, I alluded to it, it's Essie Davis for The Babadook. It is one of the best performances in any genre of any year, so I'm very happy to champion her right there. And then, so now we move on to the best sci-fi and or horror film, and the nominees are The Babadook, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Godzilla 2014, Interstellar, and Snowpiercer. My runner-up would be The Babadook, despite having my favorite performance. I do think there is one film slightly better, and it is Interstellar. It is just my favorite sci-fi film of that year, and because we put sci-fi and horror together here, that is going to be my pick. Now we move on to the action category, starting with my favorite little award here, which is Best Stunts. I actually did want to pull up the SAG Awards to tell you what the SAGs nominated for Best Stunt Ensemble. They went with Unbroken as their winner. They also nominated Fury, Get On Up, The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies, and X-Men Days of Future Past. I actually only went 1 for 5 with SAG. The only crossover I have is The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies. I also nominated Captain America, The Winter Soldier, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, John Wick, and The Raid 2. And actually my two winners, my winner and my runner-up, are not The Hobbit either. My runner-up is actually Captain America, The Winter Soldier. I think the stunt work there is really, really good. And the winner is John Wick. It kind of set the standard for modern stunts, in my opinion. So John Wick is picking up his one, and I will tell you right now, only award here at the Pickle Awards 2014, but it is a deserved one for best stunts. Now we move on to the best action sequence, the best scene containing action. This does not have to be from an action movie. It can be from a sci-fi film. It could be from a superhero genre, anything here. So the best action sequence, the nominees are the car chase in The Raid 2, the car chase. There's a few, but like the car chase, the one you think of when you think of The Raid 2. The Halo jump from Godzilla. I mean, the second best Halo jump, in my opinion, next to Mission Impossible Fallout. Just that visual with all them going in with like the red trail behind them into the mouth of, you know, the storm, and then emerging with Godzilla on the other side of the clouds. It's a haunting sequence, but a great action sequence. The kitchen fight for The Raid 2. This is kind of the one that people think of when they think of The Raid 2. The prison fight from The Raid 2. This is the one that happens earlier in the first act of the movie. That whole prison break with the mud and the rain, really amazing, but very like with the bone crunching and stuff, just like gets under your skin a little bit. Then obviously Quicksilver's prison break from X-Men Days of Future Past, one of the most unmatched, memorable, iconic action sequences. And it's going to surprise people, but I did put Quicksilver's prison break as my runner up here because, in my opinion, just the fight that most impressed me, most had me just like gagged and just crazed about it, is the prison break sequence from The Raid 2. I just think it's one of the most visceral fight sequences. The use of sound and choreography and stunts and action and acting. It is my favorite of those, but those are all very, very close. All 5 of them for best action sequence, but I'm going to go with The Raid 2. I'm going to go with the prison break. Now moving on to the acting categories here for best action film. We have Richard Armitage for The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies. We have Tom Cruise, obviously, for Edge of Tomorrow. Whenever he acts in an action film, it's always a standout of the year. Michael Fassbender for X-Men Days of Future Past as Magneto. Andrew Garfield for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. A lot of people don't love that movie, but he's great in it. And then James McAvoy, who probably gives his best performance in the X-Men franchise of his work in X-Men Days of Future Past. I did go with James McAvoy as my runner-up, but I just think Andrew Garfield here gives the best performance. He would get the Pickle Award for me for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I just think it's such a dynamic, such an amazing performance of his. Moving on to Best Actress in an Action Film, we have Emily Blunt for Edge of Tomorrow. We have Scarlett Johansson for Captain America, The Winter Soldier. We have Zoe Saldana, her first going as Gamora in Guardians of the Galaxy. We have Emma Stone from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Some really heartbreaking moments there. And then Shailene Woodley, who gives a great performance in Divergent. My runner-up will be Emily Blunt for Edge of Tomorrow. I think she's great in everything as well. But my winner is another Emma, not an Emily, which is Emma Stone in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Again, I know the people who are not fans of the movie, but Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone for me are the best performances of the action genre of that year. So I'm very much a fan of hers, and I think she does an absolutely great job. So my nominees for best action film: Guardians of the Galaxy, Hobbit: The Battle of the Five Armies, John Wick, The Raid 2, and X-Men: Days of Future Past. My runner-up will be The Hobbit: The Battle of the Five Armies, and the winner is The Raid 2. Now we're gonna get into some of the animated categories, and the nice thing about voice actor and voice actress is it's just not confined to animated film. There are some voice acting performances in live action films, which are going to be really fun to talk about. So here we go. The best actor, the best voice actor. The nominees are Scott Adsit as Baymax in Big Hero 6, Gerard Butler in How to Train Your Dragon 2. We have Bradley Cooper as Rocket Raccoon in Guardians of the Galaxy. We have Bill Irwin as Tars in Interstellar. What an iconic role for him. And then David Rowell for Song of the Sea. My runner-up would be Scott Adsit as Baymax. Just an iconic voice, an iconic performance. But my winner is Bradley Cooper for Guardians of the Galaxy. Probably should have seen that coming. He just has the largest part to play, and I think he's just the perfect casting. I couldn't imagine anyone else in that voice. Now moving on to best voice actress, we have Elizabeth Banks as Wild Style in the Lego Movie. We have Kate Blanchett in How to Train Your Dragon 2. We have Jamie Chung in Big Hero 6, America Ferrera in How to Train Your Dragon 2, and Genesis Rodriguez as Honey Lemon herself in Big Hero 6. My runner-up here would be Elizabeth Banks in the Lego Movie, but my winner would be Kate Blanchett in How to Train Your Dragon 2. Just such a great arc, a surprising character reveal, and she is a lot of the best parts of that film for me. Moving on now to the best animated feature. This one, I did pull up what the Academy nominated here for best animation. Let's see how much I fall in line with them. Their nominees were the winner, Big Hero 6. They also nominated The Box Trolls, How to Train Your Dragon 2, Song of the Sea, and The Tale of Princess Kaguya. And I will tell you right now, I go 4 for 5 here. I think everything here is pretty spot on. The only substitution I make is I took out the Box Trolls and I put the Lego Movie in there. So my nominees are Big Hero 6, How to Train Your Dragon 2, The Lego Movie, Song of the Sea, and The Tale of the Princess Kaguya. My runner-up will be Tale of the Princess Kaguya. I think it's an amazing film, and it just left me speechless and emotional and in tears. But my winner is, I think it's still the most innovative film of that year in terms of animation. I think it's one of the best animated films in terms of just looking at the visuals themselves. And I think it kind of just broke the mold of what it could be, what the expectations were, and that is The Lego Movie. So that is my best pick for animated feature. Obviously, funny because it's the only one here that didn't get nominated for the Oscars. So I think that says that the Oscars made a mistake there, and they still have not nominated any of the other Lego movies. Maybe we'll get it this year with the documentary coming out. We'll see. But now moving on to best international feature. Back then they called it foreign language film at the Oscars. This is any film that is not in the English language and not American made. So it can still be from like Canada as long as it's in a different language. Spoiler alert, there's a Canadian film on my list. So the nominees that the Oscars they went with Ida from Poland, they went with Leviathan from Russia, Tangerines from Estonia, Timbuktu from Mauritania, and Wild Tales from Argentina. All great films. I've seen about 3 or 4 of them, but none of them actually made my list. My list for best international feature are Girlhood from France, Mommy from Canada, it's a French-Canadian film, The Raid 2 from Indonesia, The Tale of the Princess Kaguya from Japan, and 2 Days, One Night from Belgium. My runner-up would be The Tale of the Princess Kaguya in Japan. I hate that I can't give it the win in this or animated, but it is so close in both those categories. But my winner is 2 Days, One Night from Belgium. It is one of the most surprising films for me. It's such a great slice of life film. Just the Dardennes bring so much honesty and empathy to that work, which is really exciting to see. So now we move on to some of the tech categories. And this is exciting because we have all the Oscars here to compare for the tech categories. Let's start with visual effects. The Oscars went with Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Guardians of the Galaxy, X-Men Days of Future Past, and they went with the win for Interstellar. I actually go 3 for 5 here with the Academy. I also picked Interstellar. I also picked Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and I also picked Guardians of the Galaxy, but I also put in Edge of Tomorrow and Godzilla to make up my 5. Now, my runner-up would be, and this is so sad because it always feels like it's the bridesmaid to all these bigger films, but I am going to put Dawn for the Planet of the Apes as my number 2, as my runner-up, but the winner here for me is Interstellar. Just the way they're able to create new images that could never be fathomed before with the black holes and all that. It is really so impressive. Now we get into best sound. This is a little awkward because we have to look at 2 categories that the Oscars had, which is sound editing and sound mixing. We'll just talk about them in tandem. So we have American Sniper nominated for both, Birdman nominated for both, Interstellar nominated for both, and Unbroken nominated for both. And then we had The Hobbit, Battle of the Five Armies for sound editing, and Whiplash for sound mixing, which it won. My sound category, I just combined them and just made them best sound. I do have some carryover here. I do have Birdman, I have Interstellar, and I have Whiplash, but I also have Captain America, the Winter Soldier. So many great clings and clangs of that shield and the knife fighting and all the guns. Like I think it's a really good, well designed soundscape in that film. And then Godzilla, just those roars and the way they utilize sound to also emphasize the scale of it all is really brilliant. My runner up here would be Interstellar, but my winner here would be Whiplash. Just the way they're able to combine the sounds and really make those sounds feel so palpable and felt. It is a very minimalist film, but the sound is so extravagant and so big, and I think it's just so well earned that Oscar for best sound mixing. And I would also give it the win here for the Pickle Awards. Now we move on to film editing, another one that Whiplash won here at the Oscars. The nominees were, and the winner was Whiplash. The other nominees, American Sniper, Boyhood, Grand Budapest Hotel, and The Imitation Game. I went 3 for 5 here. I also had Whiplash. I also had Boyhood. I also had the Grand Budapest Hotel. I also put Birdman on my list. I mean, the way they're able to make it look like one cut and one take is very impressive editing for me. I'm very surprised that didn't make it in. Maybe they thought that it was just one take and there was no editing, but that's kind of the opposite. If anything, there's so much editing that it makes it appear like it's one take. Anyway, I also put Gone Girl in there. The way they're able to edit between two storylines and flashbacks is so seamless for me. This is the most stacked category for me because genuinely, I think all 5 of these films are worthy Pickle Award winners. I did put Birdman as my runner-up because of the one take of it all, but my number one winner for best film editing, and it may be a chalk pick, but it is Whiplash. Just the way they're able to cut the camera and build intensity in those moments, in those performative moments, but also the moments of dialogue and back and forth is really amazing. But I would have been happy if Gone Girl won. I would have been happy if Boyhood won and Grand Budapest Hotel. Just so many great contenders here for best editing. As for best costume design, let's get into costume design. The Oscars went with the Grand Budapest Hotel as their winner and nominated Inherent Vice, Into the Woods, Maleficent, and Mr. Turner. I actually went 4 for 5 here. I also had the Grand Budapest Hotel. I also had Inherent Vice. I had Into the Woods, and I had Maleficent. My other substitution was Birdman. I think that Birdman suit is freaking dope. My runner-up here would have been Inherent Vice. I love PTA's attention to detail with the period pieces he does, and this is no exception. This is one of his best costumed films. But my winner is the Grand Budapest Hotel. Just so many great colors, so much amazing things to awe at on the screen. Best cinematography, the Oscars went for Birdman as the winner there. Also nominated the Grand Budapest Hotel, Ida, Mr. Turner, and Unbroken. I only go 2 for 5 here with the Oscars. I also have Birdman in there. I also have Grand Budapest Hotel, but I have, instead of Ida, for my black and white pick, I have Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. So much great black and white photography there. I also have Inherent Vice. I think there's such great use of color in that thing. And then Interstellar, which I think is underrated. It's a lot of visual effects and visual cinematography, CGI aiding in the cinematography, but there are such great shots and great cinematography used in that film. And my runner-up here would be Grand Budapest Hotel, but my winner would be pretty obvious. It's Birdman. Birdman, I think, is the biggest achievement in cinematography that year, as far as I'm concerned. Next, we move on to best makeup and hairstyling. It's interesting because the Oscars only nominated 3 things. It nominated the Grand Budapest Hotel, which won. It nominated Foxcatcher. It nominated Guardians of the Galaxy. I have those 3 in my lineup, but I added 2 more just to make it a clean 5. I put Maleficent. Those cheekbones say enough as is. And then, of course, I have Tusk. I don't like that movie, but that makeup is so gnarly and so good. My runner-up, though, is going to be Foxcatcher. The way they're able to transform Steve Carell is really amazing. But my winner is Guardians of the Galaxy. Just so many prosthetics, so many iconic characters made through their makeup, like Drax, like Gamora. So Guardians would be my pick, even though the Oscars went with Grand Budapest Hotel. So there we go. A little bit of a spread in the wealth there. Next, we move on to production design. The Academy went with the Grand Budapest Hotel, The Imitation Game, Interstellar, Into the Woods, and Mr. Turner. I go 3 for 5 there with the Academy. I also have the Grand Budapest Hotel. I have The Imitation Game. I have Interstellar. But where we differ, I actually put the Lego Movie in there. They still build a lot of practical Lego sets in that film, so I wanted to give them their due for building those Lego sets. And then Snowpiercer, which I think is just a array of great production design. Every single corridor they go to in this train is a different side of production design. Every single train car looks different than the next, which is why Snowpiercer is my runner-up. Though in a year with Grand Budapest Hotel, you can't not put Grand Budapest Hotel as your favorite for production design. The way he's able to create that hotel and create that world around it is quite literally some of the most awe-inspiring stuff I've ever seen for production design. So Grand Budapest would be my winner. Now we move on to screenplays. The writing of this year is very, very strong. I do have a lot of overlap with the Academy here, so let's get into adapted screenplay. The nominees that the Academy went with were The Imitation Game, American Sniper, Inherent Vice, The Theory of Everything, and Whiplash. I go 3 for 5 here. I also have The Imitation Game, I have The Theory of Everything, and I do have Whiplash in my 5. The 2 that I would put instead of American Sniper and Inherent Vice, I've Gone Girl. I'm shocked that wasn't nominated for the Oscars. I'm bewildered it wasn't. Gillian Flynn literally adapting her own screenplay, and it is a fantastic fantastic screenplay, so I'm shocked she didn't get nominated. And then Guardians of the Galaxy, I think it's some great humor. This is probably the most consistent MCU script to date at this point. So I would go with my runner-up. I would probably go Gone Girl. I think that script is almost flawless, but what is a flawless script? I think Whiplash. Just the dialogue in that film is one of the most memorable aspects of it. The rushing or dragging, so you do know the difference, and then all his insults. That is all in the screenplay, and I think Damien Chazelle and company just write such an amazing role for J.K. Simmons, but a whole great piece in and of itself. Moving on to original screenplay, the Academy went with Birdman as a nominee, or they went with Boyhood, The Grand Budapest Hotel, Nightcrawler, and Foxcatcher. I actually went 3 for 5. The big shocking snub that's not on my list is Boyhood. Even though Richard Linklater is one of my favorite writers, there's just 2 screenplays I thought were better. I did have Birdman, I did have Grand Budapest Hotel, and I did have Nightcrawler, but my other 2 nominees would have been Beyond the Lights, which I think is a gorgeous screenplay, a really, really empathetic piece, and then 2 Days, One Night, also a very empathetic piece, a very real, naturalistic way of talking that these characters have. It's all rooted in conversation. My runner-up here would be Nightcrawler. I think there's some really, really interesting stuff going on with the dialogue and the way this character is written. It is really well conceived. But my winner, it's winning a lot today, which is The Grand Budapest Hotel. I just think it's one of those films that has just pitch perfect design and pitch perfect writing to match it. It's one of my favorite films of that year, so it's no surprise there. Now we're moving on to the big acting categories. This is exciting. The first category we're going to get into is actually Best Youth Actor, which is not a category that the Oscars have, but the Critics' Choice have it. So I was going to bring up what the Critics' Choice picked here for their nominees, and then I'll tell you what mine were. The Critics' Choice went with Eller Coltrane from Boyhood. Very warranted pick. I mean, he's the center of that movie, even though I don't love that performance. We have Ansel Elgort. Enough said. Fault in Our Stars. Mackenzie Foy for Interstellar. Jaden Lieberher for St. Vincent. Tony Revolori for The Grand Budapest Hotel. Kavenzane Wallace for Annie. And Noah Wiseman for The Babadook. I actually share 3 of these nominees. I actually do have Mackenzie Foy on my list for Interstellar. I do have Tony Revolori for The Grand Budapest Hotel. And I do have Noah Wiseman for The Babadook. But I also put in Antoine Olivier Pilon for Mommy. One of the most heartbreaking performances, and while I think the other 2 actresses are just as good, the fact that there is a youth category, I wanted to highlight him. And then also David Rowell for Song of the Sea. He is giving a voice performance that is really, really fitting for the film and really captures the spirit of that character. My runner-up would actually be Antoine Olivier Pilon for Mommy, but my winner would be Noah Wiseman for The Babadook. I think his performance is just absolutely exceptional in that film, so that would be my pick. My Acting Ensemble Award here, another one that the Oscars do not award, but the SAGs have a category for Best Cast, so I'm going to nominate my own 5, but I want to first tell you what the SAGs nominated here. SAG went with Birdman, Boyhood, The Imitation Game, The Grand Budapest Hotel, and The Theory of Everything. I actually only went 2 for 5 here with the Academy. I also went with Birdman, and I also went with The Grand Budapest Hotel, but my other nominees, Guardians of the Galaxy, such a great accumulation of actors in those roles. I couldn't imagine a different team put together. Gone Girl, which I think has such great like little bit parts with like Tyler Perry, Neil Patrick Harris. There's so many great actors who pop up in this thing that really make a great ensemble. And then lastly, this is a TV movie. It was released on HBO, so it didn't qualify for Oscars, but I absolutely think it's probably the greatest ensemble of that year, which is The Normal Heart, which, spoiler, is my winner. My runner-up would be The Grand Budapest Hotel, but my winner here is The Normal Heart. That ensemble is stacked. Joe Mantello, Jim Parsons, Matt Bomer, Mark Ruffalo, insane, so good. Jonathan Groff, Julia Roberts, Taylor Kitsch. I'm probably forgetting some. Alfred Molina. There's just so many great actors, and they all bring their all, and they're all fantastic. If you haven't seen The Normal Heart, get on it. It's on HBO. It's fantastic. And my favorite acting ensemble of that year. Now we're moving on to the big guys, the big supporting actors and supporting actresses. Starting with supporting actor, the nominees for the Oscars went to J.K. Simmons for Whiplash. Also nominated was Robert Duvall for The Judge. Oh, that's funny. Ethan Hawke for Boyhood, Edward Norton for Birdman, and Mark Ruffalo for Foxcatcher. I went 3 for 5 there with the Academy. I also had J.K. Simmons. I also had Ethan Hawke. I also had Edward Norton, but I would put in Matt Bomer for The Normal Heart. I think he's a standout of that ensemble. He has some crushing moments in that film. And then Riz Ahmed for Nightcrawler. This is one of his first big performances. It's the one that caught my attention of his, and I think he's amazing in it. My runner-up would probably be Edward Norton for Birdman. I think he's just so solid going toe-to-toe with Michael Keaton in that film. But my winner, J.K. Simmons for Whiplash. It is, in my opinion, the best performance of that year. Moving on to performance from supporting actress, we have the Oscar nominees Patricia Arquette for Boyhood, Laura Dern for Wild, Keira Knightley for The Imitation Game, Emma Stone for Birdman, and Meryl Streep for Into the Woods. I actually only go 1 for 5 here with the Academy. The only one I pick is the winner, Patricia Arquette. My other nominees, though, are Carrie Coon from Gone Girl, just a great supporting performance, really challenging Ben Affleck in that film. Stacey Martin from Nymphomaniac Volume 1. She is a revelation in that film. She's so good. Just all the empathy you can get from her character. It's a really crushing performance, but it is a great performance from an actor I'd never seen anything from before. Micah Monroe, another great star-making performance for The Guest. This is right before It Follows, right before the rest of the world kind of caught on to how great she was. She's now in Longlegs. Like, her career has come a very long way, but I think she gives a incredible performance in The Guest. And then we have Kristen Stewart in Still Alice, a really subdued performance, but a really beautiful one. I think a lot of people only look at one performance in that film without looking at the rest, and I think the other performances are just as good. And I think Kristen Stewart is one of those amazing performances in that film. My runner-up would actually be Micah Monroe for The Guest. I think she's so good in that film, but my winner is the same as the Oscars. It is Patricia Arquette for Boyhood. It is one of those all-time great career-making performances, or career-defining, I should say. Her career was already made, but it is a career-defining performance, so I had to go with Patricia Arquette here. Moving on to Best Actor and Actress. Starting with Best Actor, the nominees for the Oscars were Eddie Redmayne for The Theory of Everything, Steve Carell for Foxcatcher, Bradley Cooper for American Sniper, Benedict Cumberbatch for The Imitation Game, and Michael Keaton for Birdman. I also went 3 for 5 here. I also had Benedict Cumberbatch, I had Eddie Redmayne, I had Michael Keaton. Those are kind of the big 3 there. But instead of Steve Carell and Bradley Cooper, who I like but don't love as much as these other 2, I have Macon Blair from Blue Ruin, who I think is just exceptional in that movie, a small movie that not a lot of people have seen, but is so good if you have seen it. And then I think the actor of the year, being in both Enemy and Nightcrawler, I went with Nightcrawler for Jake Gyllenhaal. I think he is the performer of the year between 2 of the best performances of his career happening in the same year. I went with Nightcrawler, though I would also not be upset if Enemy were here as well. I almost double nominated him, but wanted to spread the wealth. My runner-up would actually be the winner itself, Eddie Redmayne. I think he's still great in the role, but my winner would be Jake Gyllenhaal. I think it is his year. I think it is one of his best performances in Nightcrawler, so I would have given it to Jake Gyllenhaal for Nightcrawler there. That is the Pickle Award winner. As for Best Actress, the nominees for the Oscar were Julianne Moore for Still Alice, Marion Cotillard for 2 Days, One Night, Felicity Jones for The Theory of Everything, Rosamund Pike for Gone Girl, and Reese Witherspoon for Wild. Once again, going 3 for 3 with the Oscars, 3 for 5, I should say. I also had Marion Cotillard for 2 Days, One Night, just such a natural, empathetic performance there. Julianne Moore for Still Alice, it is still an all-time great performance of hers, and Rosamund Pike from Gone Girl, just the amount she's doing in that movie is just so stunning to see. I would also put in here Essie Davis for The Babadook. I think she is giving one of the best horror performances of all time. And Gugu Mbatha-Raw for Beyond the Lights. It's a performance that I think elevates an already exceptional movie to even greater heights. I think she is someone who should have been a much bigger star than she is right now. Hopefully her time is still coming, but this is one of the best performances I've seen of that year. It's very tough to even come up with a runner-up and a winner here because there's so many good performances. My runner-up is going to be Essie Davis. I think her performance in The Babadook is exceptional, but my winner is going to be Rosamund Pike for Gone Girl. What she's doing in this film is something that very few actresses I think could capture, and I think she does it in such a menacing but also like oddly believable, haunting way. I think it's an exceptional performance. Now moving on to the big one, because I'm not doing Best Picture. As I said, we're doing a top 14 video coming in the next few days where I will reveal my Best Picture of the year. But here's Best Director. The Academy went for Alejandro G. Inarritu for Birdman, Richard Linklater for Boyhood, Bennett Miller for Foxcatcher, Wes Anderson for Grand Budapest, and Morton Tildum for The Imitation Game. I actually only went 2 for 5 here. I did have Alejandro G. Inarritu in my list. I did also have Wes Anderson on my list, but I also put in Damien Chazelle for Whiplash, of course. One of my favorite films, one of the best directed films. I had David Fincher for Gone Girl, and I had also had Christopher Nolan for Interstellar. This is just like a really heavy like film bro 5, but it is, in my opinion, the best 5 directing jobs of the year. My runner-up would actually be Damien Chazelle for Whiplash. I think what he brings to that direction is so impeccable. That being said, I think a lot of the strength of that film also stems on the actors and the editing, whereas for me, the best director of the year and the one who I think just saw his vision through from start to finish in a way that like I don't think any other director could have directed is Wes Anderson for The Grand Budapest Hotel. It is, in my opinion, the best directed film of that year. Now, is it the best film of that year? You'll have to wait and see when I reveal my top 14 of 2014 in just a few days. But thank you for watching. watching. This was the Pickle Awards of 2014 in retrospect. Let me know who you would have awarded of my nominations for those different categories. And if there are any snubs, if I left off any names that you would also like to champion, let me know down below. I know I have some hot takes here or there, but those are my picks for the best of 2014 and what I would have nominated in the Pickle Awards had I done it that year. So thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned, as I said, for our top 14 of 2014 coming in a few days. The retrospective is over, so check out all the reviews on Letterboxd. And otherwise, I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.